Today, really excited to chat with these two lovely folks. So obviously we're here to talk about how to soften a hard market. Obviously a little clickbaity and buzzwordy, as everybody knows what's going on in the world today, but some two really great experts here. So I'll let these two kind of introduce themselves. We've got the lovely Merritt Peters and David Embry here. Merritt, David would love to learn from you on, or the audience would, on what you do, kind of how this relates to your day-to-day, and let you two take it from here.
Go ahead, Merritt.
Okay, good. So my name's Marit, and I'm with the Independent Insurance Agents of Texas here in Austin, Texas. We have about 1,300 member agencies across the state. I'm also the managing partner for Catalyst, which is a platform that actually looks at insurtechs and helps agents with decision-making and how to maximize their technology. And I'm lucky enough to spend most of my time actually working with agencies in their offices, doing business consulting, helping from a standpoint of strategic planning, as well as just sort of tactical, how do we engage the team better? So when I think about softening the hard market, it's almost how do we take care of the humans as well as, from a standpoint of technology and efficiencies and so forth. So I'm looking forward to visiting with you guys today, and hopefully I can contribute a little bit to the conversation.
Yeah, great. So I'm David Embry. I'm the founder and CEO of Milo. We started this endeavor about 9 years ago with the initial investor, Lockton, the big broker. And the main thesis was that to do the high volume, low premium transactions, right, in an efficient way for an agency, big or small, right, you had to layer technology on top of that because you wanted to create a great customer experience, but at relatively low premiums, you needed to be able to run lots of volume through. So anytime that you could, reduce data entry, make automated recommendations, et cetera, we wanted to, ultimately do that. And so we lived the first part of our life learning a bunch inside of, as a digital agency inside of Lockton. Lockton was certainly a client of ours, but we also plugged our technology into other entities' ecosystems who had clients who needed insurance, ideally to find them at the inflection point where they needed to buy that insurance, and then pump information over to our system. Ultimately, let our agents make recommendations in terms of coverage carrier and bind. Raise some capital, outside capital in 2018. At the end of last year with our outside investor, about Lockton out, so we're completely independent. And today we really have two businesses. One is an agency, it's a digital agency, and digital doesn't mean only online, because almost 100% of the policies that we bind happen in our agency. So one is a digital agency that works across commercial lines, personal lines, and benefits, right? And our focus is around the low premium, high volume transactions, right? And so we do that for ourselves and our partners. We have channel partners who we plug into their ecosystem. Another buzzword, Tucker, embedded insurance. We've been embedding our capabilities since we founded our business. And we embed our capability in their ecosystem. Their clients come to us. We sold about 60,000 different clients across 50 states. We've got about 100 and give or take $60 million in premium that runs through our agency. We do $3 or $4 million new premium a month. And as we did this transaction, became truly independent, we had focused the technology on our own agency to become efficient, right? And the biggest proof point, I think, is 4 or 5 years ago, our average agent sold about $35,000 a month in premium. The average agents on the commercial lines now sell around $170,000 a month in new premium. And then, we also use technology to make the service component and all of that better. But we thought we could take that out and help other agencies, whether big or small, solving the same problem, right? So it's easier to say what we're not. We're not an agency management system. We're not a rater. Right, we're not a CRM, right? We live in that space because we think there's a whole bunch of efficiency around recommendation engines, right? Coverage recommendations, insurance intelligence. So when somebody comes to us, we can plug into any agency management system. We've got integrations with carriers and raters and, all of that. But we're agnostic as it relates to those things. The area that we're focused on building out and delivering, and I think it ties into what we're talking about, is making, when somebody comes to us, instead of us saying, what coverage do you want? Right? Or what carrier, and instead of leaving it up to every agent, what carrier should you go to? We have built algorithms increasingly smarter, right, to make coverage recommendations and then carrier recommendations, and then plug into these systems, right, to make those transactions efficient, so that a smaller client can have a great experience. And we use technology sort of to enhance that. So long introduction, but thanks for allowing it.
Yeah, thanks, David. Appreciate it, and Morat for the introductions there. So obviously, two heavy hitters. David, running a technology first agency that is actually bringing technology to the market as well, and Morat obviously working in the trenches every day with agencies across a wide variety of agencies. So, and for those that don't know me, I'm Tucker. I lead sales at InsuredMine. We're an insurance specific CRM. If you somehow made it to this webinar without knowing who we are, that's who we are. So we'll dig into the market a little bit today to get us started. Really, the agenda is we'll talk about what do we see in the market, what does this mean for agencies, and at the end of the day, what can we do about it? How should we be thinking about things? So a couple quick numbers just to preface this, and then David, Morat, would love to hear your thoughts on the impacts and what you're seeing. But about 36% of consumers today are saying that they're delaying or canceling plans for big purchases, right? So they're not actually purchasing things, whether it's a business, a car, a home that they might need to insure, right? So obviously this impacts us as agencies. We're seeing a huge increase in the price of insurance, right? The average increase of car insurance over a year period was nearly 20%, right? Huge swing, bigger than what at least they're saying inflation is, which those numbers are interesting to look at. But and then the same with commercial property. So not only are you seeing people not buying as many things in the market that they may insure, but the prices are going up. So just some big numbers here to talk about the shift. David, Morat, how are you seeing this influence the market? What are you seeing as a big shift in the market right now?
Go ahead, David.
I think that in addition to these things, which are true, I mean, people, the non-renewals or the carriers wholesale pulling out of markets originally for new business only, and now not renewing in some of those markets too is probably as big a pressure as anything, right? So you could rely on somebody having appetite, a carrier having appetite for certain things in certain places. You can't necessarily do that anymore, right? And so being able to, deal with the realities, which you outlined appropriately, right? Prices are going up, and carriers are I think many of them are deciding it's okay not to grow, maybe even to shrink, and get more focused on what they're doing, and as a reality. Right. So for us, when you see a lot of volume and you pump a lot of things through, right, getting the risk to the right carrier who does have appetite right now in a scalable way is really the way that we think about solving this, right? That, and two, there are new carriers out there, like for instance, Ken down in Florida, that are interested or trying to grow business where others are shrinking, and finding those and getting them plugged in is another thing that we're doing to attack the problem. And in some cases, there aren't a lot of options, right, as rates go up for people who are getting renewals, and right now they just sort of have to live with it. So.
Yeah, I would agree. And I guess I don't need to tell anybody on this call just how much you're reworking everything in the world, just the quantity and the volume of remarketing and the importance of, educating the consumer on what's actually happening so they don't end up with a worse product because they paid a cheaper price, right? So I think our jobs as agents have become even more critical as independent agents because you're making sure that people understand what the kind of protection that they have to have and preparing them for what is going to probably happen to their premiums. And those numbers are huge, right? We're not talking about a few dollars here and there, but they can actually be somebody's paycheck, for a 2-week period or whatever. And so are your clients prepared to do that? The number of agents I've talked to that say the stress levels of the volume of work, the stress levels of being attacked by consumers, the stress of negotiating on the carrier side with underwriting requirements, it actually elevates the skill set that everybody needs on the floor. And so we're not only asking our employees to work harder, but we're having to get them to be more critical thinkers and salespeople just in the value of who we are every single day. So those are the things that kind of bounce around for me on the elevated level of conversations and negotiations people need right now, negotiation skills people need all the way around their environment.
I think that's spot on. I think in general, the last decade, probably maybe longer, for sure has and the commercials on TV, Peyton Manning's Town and the Gecko and, all of that, say 15% in 15 minutes or 10% in 10 minutes or 20% in 20 minutes, right? That's just it's set an expectation for the consumer that is just not there. I mean, as I said, when somebody comes to us, like the first thing we want to do is make a coverage recommendation, right? Because when that bad thing happens, you want to make sure people are properly covered, and we can save you money, right, by having higher deductibles or lowering the coverage that we give you, et cetera. And that's not what we're here for. It's to make those recommendations and make sure people understand what they're getting and that they're getting a fair value for the dollars that they're spending, right? And this has made us focus as an industry on that.
Good.
100%. Yeah. And some more stats that I just pulled up, folks are thinking about going without insurance as a result of this price increase. More people are shopping around, which means retention rates are going down, right? At 84% is now the average. And we're seeing that across the board. So as David and Mart alluded to, there's just more price conscious nature to the consumer as our value now becomes more consultative in this to let people understand what are they actually buying? What do they actually need? Right. And making sure that they completely understand that is the most value that they can derive. But also it becomes now, how can we be more efficient? Right. We might be getting less at bats that take us more time. We may be working harder on renewals at any given time right now. So in fact, some interesting stats here, and this is kind of a broad paintbrush, but it does facilitate a good conversation, is your go-to-market team, producers, some of your service team, depending on how your agency is actually spending about a third of their time today really doing their selling job, right? Moving things forward, doing things that drive revenue. As Mart alluded to earlier, they're doing a lot of things that are causing them stress, which I would classify as admin work, right? It's work that at the end of the day may be helping drive the revenue forward, but isn't a direct thing there. So let's shift the conversation. Mara, David, what can we do to flip this script where it's more orange than it is gray when we look at an agency?
Yeah, so I'll jump in here maybe on this one. It's the few things that rattle around in my brain when I look at this slide and I think about people is that, there are definitely some humans that will gravitate naturally towards the sales piece of things and avoid the admin stuff. And then you have a lot of people also that would rather do admin work than the interaction and the sales piece. So, for me, really looking at things more on a team dynamic and being able to leverage people's strengths in the right seats is key. So, I think I sent you guys a note this weekend as I was thinking about this, saying, you can shift this and say our processes will look different. We may automate things so that it takes care of the administrivia. But if you don't have the right people who adopt it, you're still going to operate this way at the end of the day, because that's people like what they do, so to speak. So I do think having that kind of a conversation with teams. So last week I was visiting with an agency that we've done work with them for years and years and years, and many agencies on this call may very well do this or not, but really using that planned versus unplanned work and dividing and creating teams that actually support a client rather than having one account manager sort of do all things right for them, and being able to leverage people's strengths. So you have somebody who handles all the planned work and it's doing all the renewals, and they can keep their heads down and they're not being disrupted all day long by activity and daily service kind of stuff. And then you have a team member that's actually doing daily service, playing triage, protecting the other person so they can stay focused. So I think there's high level processes that need to be looked at. And then the thing I always say to my staff, to agents or whatever, if you think it should be easier, it probably should. So stop doing it and figure out what the answer is. And if you just think this isn't a good use, one of my favorite questions is, what's not a good use of your talents and skills? And that will tend to tell you something that probably could be automated, and find the systems and tools to do it. So to me, it's a high level piece and a conversation, and being very strategic about it, dividing and conquering work so you have it in the right place, and then getting rid of that sort of low hanging fruit that could either be automated, outsourced, to a virtual assistant kind of a thing, or to an outsourcing company out there like the Resource Pros or the Patras or whatever. But I think we're not critical enough, and our people tend to think, well, I've just got to grind through this. This is just how it's going to be. And so trying to create that concept on your teams, where literally on a weekly basis you're saying, where do you think you're wasting time, and what can we be doing as an organization to sort of alleviate that?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And automation and looking for low-hanging fruit, and where can you have or integrate a capability that doesn't require human interaction is the first thing that we do. Like, as I said earlier, like, we focus on the high volume, low premium stuff, right? So reducing data entry, integrating with raters, et cetera, all of that's very important. From an organizational standpoint, our agency, we have people that sell and people that do admin, right? And I think the big change now, given what we just talked about for 10 or 15 minutes before, is that, a lot of the set it and forget it, auto renewals, only have to deal with the exceptions, are becoming more the norm. And so for us, we're thinking about how do we use the sales tools around recommendation engines and integrations that we have to help automate the admin work. And I do agree with Merritt that there are two ends of the spectrum, right? One, people that like to sell, two, people that like to sit at their desk and do work and don't care if they're really talking about it. There's also people sort of in the middle, figuring out the account managers that are better or more oriented to customer impact for us, right? Because we've got about 160-ish people, and putting them more on the renewal stuff and letting the other people do the back office work, like Merritt said, is super important. And then also we hire a lot of agents and hire and train and get them up, and not all of them are love selling, but a lot of them have a lot of knowledge and are good customer service people. And so, having somebody come in and figuring out sort of where they can land and get to know the way our technology works, et cetera, have allowed us to sort of manage that. But don't get me wrong, it is the biggest thing that we are dealing with. We're not that old, and so for a long time we focused on growing, and our book is relatively big now versus new sales. And so how do we automate and make that a better environment, use the tools that we built to help us retain as much of our client base as we can, is super important.
Yeah, I guess my comment when you were talking about that is, we probably, all of us on this call, probably most of the agents here, have always been in this mindset of, we always coach to being proactive, start renewals early, get out ahead of everything. And now we're in this environment that it really probably doesn't matter how much you're proactive, you're hustling at the end and very reactionary at the end and trying to pull rabbits out of a hat at the last minute. So I can imagine just how frustrating it is when your whole mindset is we should be able to produce early. We should be able to prevent surprises in the work that we do for our clients. And we're really not in that situation anymore. So taking the time to, on the sales side of things, doing the education, building the relationship and the trust with the client so that by the time you get to the scramble, they know what work you've done. They've trusted that you've got their back. It feels a little less stressful there. And sometimes we, it's kind of like the, swim like a duck, right? So you look calm on the surface and you're flapping around underneath. And I think to a certain extent, we owe our customers the transparency of just how much work we're putting into on their behalf in order to get the best solution. My E&O person would kill me right now. She heard me say best. So I think she's on. So I only did that for her, probably, if she's listening. But it comes down to operational excellence, and then also being strategic at the marketplace, right? Is like, what do you need to block to protect the markets so that you don't end up in a situation where you haven't taken care of the client. So maybe the shift of what proactive looks like may feel a little bit different in the way that we're talking and the way that we're behaving with the markets and our clients.
Yeah, and as an industry, and Mart said this too, it's figuring out what things exist that you can plug in to free up the most important thing so you can interact with clients and do, value-added work, not necessary work that can be automated, that can unleash a tremendous amount of, goodwill and customer focus from things that otherwise were just, busy work, necessary, right, but not differentiating.
As I look at this, I wonder, Tucker, if that paradigm shift isn't selling and admin work, but relationship management and admin work, right? Because it does get you thinking. If you're sitting with an account manager or whoever and saying, okay, here's how we want to apply this, and this is what percentage of your time I need you doing. I think you called it, David, impact work, right? Like, let's make sure that you're doing those things. It may actually make our staff feel more productive because we're not focusing on the sale as the end activity, but the relationship management as the activity, and that's the result that matters.
So that's a really, really good point. And obviously, we're a CRM. Relationship management is in our DNA here at InsuredMine. I think a lot of what we're talking about is now efficiency, understanding what we're strong at, putting our time in those things. As you go into agencies or your own agency, how do you understand what you're good at? How do you start to pull apart the pieces of, hey, I need to try and automate this thing? What are the questions that we should be asking ourselves as agencies to better evaluate this? Because obviously a recommendation is kind of slow down to speed up, slow down, better understand, revamp how you think about the business. How do we go about doing that?
You want to take a crack at it first,
Yeah,
David?
go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll let you go this time.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's exactly why we found what we found our business on, right? Is, starting with the lowest hanging fruit, which some of it for us was just process and structure, right? And others were like low hanging fruit around not making our agents or our admin people enter information in multiple places, right? There are easy ways to copy stuff over, whether it's internal or external, so that we can just increase the amount of time they have to be customer focused, right? And then moved on to integrating capabilities that other organizations have spent, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars building, right, into our platform, so that the end user, whether that's a rater, CRM, or agency management system, so that the end user, the agent in our case, has no idea like where they're ultimately going on the back end to get the data. They're working in a system that's been optimized for the workflow. And then over the last few years, right, we've really focused on the reason we exist and the reason that we're all in this business, which is to advise clients, right, on what coverages they need and what carrier they should go to based on their specific situation. And so increasingly, we believe that's our value add, to sit on top of all this other work that's been done by us and in other agencies, right, to It's a virtuous circle, right? We're making recommendations that are consistent across all of our agents. We're not asking questions that we don't have to do. We're reducing E&O. We're making and we're increasing the efficiency with which we can get people across our system, whether that's upfront or on an ongoing basis when a remarket is required at renewal.
Yeah, great. I kind of wrote some notes down here. So part of it, I think, is people and their talents and having people in the right seats. And then I think about the technology piece. So I guess one of the things that I would specifically say is if your staff doesn't know how to do process workflows, I think that's a critical skill to learn. So you can actually draw out visually your processes and see where there's redundancy and where there's confusion. So if people can learn how to do swim lanes, right, and use Post-it notes and lay out, the number of times I'm in rooms where people talk about a process but never visualize the process, or it's written down and you can't see the inefficiencies, that would be where I would start with from a very practical perspective of what could I do today as an agent. Literally put up pieces of paper, lay out swim lanes, and write up the actions everyone's taking in order and do current state. You also find where there's to your point, David, like how do you make sure everyone's consistent across the board, right? Oh, no, I do it that way. Oh, I do it that way. Well, I do this in that order. That creates inefficiencies in of itself. And I always say, don't buy technology till you're clear about the process, because if people aren't going to do the process, why invest, right? So let's make sure we know how and where we're doing it. And swim lanes are also really helpful from a perspective of knowing where decisions need to be made and where you need to pass off to each other. So you're not both doing, or three people doing the same type of work. So at a very practical level, that would be one thing that I would say. I think embedding it into your weekly huddles with your staff, where you actually make it an agenda item, which is, where are we wasting our time this week? Where did you feel like you wasted the most? Where do you think that is not a good use of your time and talents? I was thinking about Southwest Airlines, and some people are fans and some people aren't, but here's an example. They actually studied, and so this would be a question of like, where are you spending a lot of time? They looked at their customer service phone people, and they were answering a lot of questions around, where's my credit from when I cancel the flight? What's the code I use to get it, right? And they realized that a ton of time was just answering that question. So they changed the website. Now you can find your credit. Like, you don't have to go ask that question. So cut down on a lot of wasted time. And yet the other day, I noticed that when I actually went to go book a flight, the credit automatically applied like that. So obviously they're doing another round of efficiencies. So getting your team to think about workflow, laying it out, continuing to cut down the steps. Where do we go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth that we could eliminate? What could we put it out in the, it's almost like, how do you implement supplemental data on the front end? Because you always know you're going to need it on the back end, and you're not negotiating back and forth. Those items where the stuff that you do, David, the stuff InsuredMine does, those things can really help streamline process and remove waste. And then, one of the core tenets that we use when we're working with our agents is teaching our employees how to do problem solving, right? So we use the model DMAIC. So define the problem, measure it, analyze it, improve it, and control it. And then we add another to celebrate because we did it. But the point is that we always like to have fun, David. I think you probably figured that out by now, to try not to be too serious about life. But what we don't do well is we don't do root cause analysis and fix our problems. We slap a Band-Aid on it and we keep going, and we say, next time we'll come back around and fix it. And we don't ever get there because we're putting out fires all the time. So if you can, and it's painful. I'll say to people, well, let's put the work in now. To your point, slow down to speed up. Well, we're trying to change the tires while it's driving down the highway. But if you can create part of your culture, you say, look, you know what? Once a month, we're spending an hour on whatever this is, or 30 minutes every week, and it just becomes ingrained. It's predictable. Same time every week, we're going to spend on this. We're going to dig down. We're going to figure out where the real issues are. Sometimes it's studying what's working versus what's not working.
Yep.
And then being able to specifically say, okay, let's carve this out. Let's figure out how we handle it. But I don't think enough agencies, doesn't even didn't even be agencies, businesses take the time to really think about problem solving, work on it, teach the skill sets so that the team really knows how to be self-correcting and self-managed at the end of the day. And I think those are key things we can do with our agencies out there if you can get it right.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
events are never going to go away, right? And so two things. One, you not only have to do it, you have to get buy-in and get the entire agency, right, to operate the new paradigm, right? Because people are creatures of habit, right? And so why do you do it that way? I've always done it that way, right? So you have to have internal champions, and carrot and stick, right, in terms of process, to move it forward. Because if you don't, you just keep repeating the same cycle. Maybe you're a little bit better, but you just keep repeating the same cycle.
Yeah, I was facilitating a panel, which might be more fun than actually talking. Just so you know, Tucker, you might have gotten the best job on this call here. But I was facilitating a call and it was on technology, and one of the agents is really, sophisticated when it comes to technology. And as he acquires, he moves everybody very quickly into the new processes and all of that. And he said, here's what I've learned is that people don't like change. And at a year later, they've forgotten how painful it is. So he said, I put a sign on my door that says no bitching for a year. On day 366, if you're still not happy, you can come in here and talk to me. But I mean, I'm sure that's not exactly how it works. But the reality is it's getting people to, and so a lot of times I'll say to my staff, let's do this for 6 months and study it. And if it doesn't work after that, I'm open to reopening the conversation, but let's commit and work the process. And that does give them a little bit of an out then to say, okay, if it doesn't work, you're not going to stick us with this forever. And I like carrots, but every once in a while you have to use a stick, unfortunately.
Yeah, as you talk through things that we use the word customer journey, or the words customer journey, right? I think to your point, going and looking at that and taking a second to whiteboard, to post-it note, what happens on like when a lead comes in, what do we do with it? When it actually shows intent to buy something, what do we do with it? When we're quoting it, what happens at that point, right?
Yep.
When you can start to understand the nuances, what's being done differently, maybe, oh my gosh, we're doing this every time and it's 20 minutes long when we don't need to, or we can get somebody else to do it or automate it. That's when you're going to start truly understanding, one, how can I be more efficient? What within that can I automate? And at the end of the day, that's going to help us look out for customers. If we can meet them where they are, if we can better understand the process they go through, all that ties into, how can we personalize their experience, make it better? And ideally, we're doing that through technology, which is just supporting the people's process.
Yeah.
And on the front end of that, you need to also know what you can't do, right? I mean, think about the stuff that comes in that you just aren't going to be able to do, right? Or you just choose not to do, right? So if you can carve that off and get it, like let the person or the small business owner know, I can't help you. Here's a place you can go look, or get it to somebody who can, even if it's not you. Like that's a huge, gain from a customer experience standpoint, as well as from your own agency standpoint, right? Because you've just taken work that somebody's going to spend time on that's never going to amount to anything, right? And I think a lot of times we forget that. That's a big part of what we do on the front end. We call it traffic cop. It comes in and we want to get the right risk to the right people. And then we want to move people down different paths. And if we can't do it and we know that it's a coastal risk in South Florida right now, we're not going to spend time on that. So we, communicate with those people that come to us in a way of a place that somebody that may have interest in helping them, but we don't touch it, right? It allows us to free up our time for people that we can help. And I do think that even though the customer doesn't love it, right, I do think they appreciate the fact that they didn't spend a bunch of time with us and then we told them.
Yeah. One of the things in fact, I was in an agency last week and they've done a lot of work to figure out exactly who are the clients they can actually support better or not, those kinds of things. And the receptionist was in the meeting with us and she finally said, now I get it. It just hurts my feelings when we tell people no, because I feel like we should take care of everybody, and so again, it's sort of that cultural education of, what seat do we fit into? And to your point, if you know what you're going to say no to and you're able to give them a solution, at least they got off the call feeling better than worse, right? Well, at least somebody pointed me in a direction that's meaningful. And so to that end, what I would say is maybe even a very simple thing is to tell your staff for the next month, write down everything you have to say no to someone on. Write that down. There, you might find that there's a trend that we're all wasting time on that we could actually put as part of a marketing or on the website or add it to an email footer or whatever that happens to look like. So finding those things out, you can do them in little sprints of data and you just keep tweaking and tweaking, right? You always get better, but
you'll also
never
find
arrive.
out that you don't always have to say no. You know, you might be able to find a carrier. If you see we have a scattergram that we do for all the stuff that comes in, because we get literally, 10 or 12,000 opportunities a month that come into our organization. We do a scattergram around like risks that we can't write, right? And so we try to do one of two things with the big bulk of those things. One, find somebody that wants to do it, right? Or that we would do, or find a partner that we can send those leads to who have interest, because then we can talk about the volume that we get and exactly what it looks like, right? And so, again, even through some of these, like Bull Penguin or Tivoli, right? Stuff that we don't get, that we know we don't want, but somebody in the world does, right? We can efficiently send it through them and get that person, get as many people as possible to get coverage without us having to like spend a bunch of time on the front end and take valuable resources to figure out we don't want to do it. So.
Yeah, I think it's the old 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your revenue or customers are going to come from 20% of your leads, generally speaking. And, I tell my sales reps and I tell people that we consult with that buy our software is, saying no and disqualifying early is a really good thing, right? It's a really good thing to know who you should be going after, manage that pipeline accordingly, and then be efficient through that process. And I think that's really what we need to understand through all this is what's a good fit for us? How are we making sure we're most efficient with that good fit? And are we winning the amount of good fits that we should be? If not, why aren't we?
I love that you have personalization through technology in here, because automating, it reminds us that it's not about not high touch, right? It's just touching and having that relationship at the right place and getting rid of the noise that's wasting time. So using those critical thinking and those human skills right now is more important than ever. And the technology just allows us to take those same humans and do more meaningful stuff all day long, every day.
Yeah, technology should facilitate a personalized experience, right? So that it, and if you do it right, it will, because it helps me as an agent understand the need, right? Not ask questions I should already know the answer to. Make real recommendations based on my situation and tell me what carrier I should go to. And if that takes 30 minutes, that's a much better experience than if it takes 4 calls every 3 days, right? So
yeah, and technology is not a silver bullet. I say that as a head of sales of a technology company, right? And I think understanding a lot of the things, again, what you can't do, what you can do, what you actually need, what you need to solve for is going to really tell you what the tech can do for you or what your biggest needs are. At the end of the day, your employees are still flying the plane being the tech that's around them. There's, obviously big buzz of AI. I can't believe nobody has used that in this presentation yet, but, AI will never replace a human being. Somebody still needs to manage the AI at the end of the day. So keeping that in the back of your mind at all times, I think is quite important as well.
Well, I think the other thing too, that a lot of people talk about, whether it's AI or embedded, et cetera, right? Insurance is complicated, right? So, the answer to every question, because I didn't come from an insurance background, I worked at JP Morgan for a long time, but I hired a lot of really smart insurance people. And I would say, well, what about this? And their answer is 100% of the time, it depends, right? And so it depends is what makes it hard, right? It depends on where you are and what you do. And, you can be a contractor, but if you do this versus that, right? And those are the the algorithms that we can build to help us make better recommendations, right? But ultimately, it empowers our agency, or in the future, we hope, and with some of the betas and stuff that we're doing, we hope other agencies, right, to be able to do that much more efficiently, because we're all driving for an outcome, right, which is the small business owner or the individual that comes to us. We want to make a good recommendation so that when the bad thing happens, they've got the right coverage, right, and between now and then, they're paying fair value for what they're buying, right. I'm pretty sure no small business owner wakes up or starts every day or starts a business to buy insurance, right? It's a necessary evil, not the reason for their existence. And we just have to remember that.
And to that end, reminding your staff just how critical their role is in business working, right? People having homes, people being able to take risks in their lives, because right now it's painful. So the more you can take the time to talk about the value and the impact each person has. I have an agency out in Galveston, and sometimes somebody will say, well, why do you stay in business there? Because that's a really tough place to do business, right? But they said, well, we started this firm 100 years ago, and we promised the community that we were going to be there, and we're not just going to bail because it got hard, right? So that's one thing I love about independent agents in general, is that the spirit is truly there from a perspective of, we want to see our communities thrive. So we're committed to that. And when we elevate it to that level conversation, people hopefully will start thinking about insurance as really more of an opportunity that they get by having it, as opposed to it's something I have to pay for that hopefully I'll never have to collect. So I'm not looking forward to my renewal on my home insurance. I'm just saying this year. So I feel for everybody on the call and my agent if they're on the call.
I love it. If anybody's looking to, sell some new insurance, you may reach out to Mara, a potential client here. So
we get like 10 emails today.
I would imagine. One thing you brought up, so you're outwardly talking about the challenges. You're talking about, the market. I think that's something that we kind of put in the back of the mind, but we never really say it out loud when we're talking to prospects, right? Read a book years ago on emotional intelligence, and it's around name it to tame it, right? So if you can get ahead of objections, you can give them market dynamics, feed them insights, and understand their concerns before you even come to you. If you can name it, you can tame it, and you can better walk them through what they're going through if you understand it, as opposed to let's just get right into it. Let's talk about why it matters, right? So I think
and here's what's happening, and this is what you can expect in this process, whether you're in a renewal or a new business. So before we jump into it, let's talk about what are all the factors that are going on, and let's understand that. And then things do change. And I think David, you were mentioning it earlier, right? When people understand it beyond price, then they get quite concerned, what the policy does cover and what it doesn't cover, as opposed to, well, I just need the best number I can have, because there's nothing that hurts an account manager or a producer or an advisor's heart more is when they see one of their clients end up with subpar products, and then something happens to them and you can't do anything about it.
It's a simple phrase that we use with our agents, right? It's I can do that, but I don't recommend it, and here's why. Yeah. Because people do get really focused, and I understand, right? It's real dollars, and it's bottom line impactful on price. And as I said earlier, I think that our industry has done all of us a huge disservice, right, by the commercials, et cetera, that are on TV and the things that it implies.
So we have ongoing conferences here and events through the Texas Association. Hard market is, we just did a rebrand of one of our programs, and we had a series of sessions that were set up for it. And we decided to make it virtual, which means we're just not going to put as many offerings because it's not in a person conference. And so we laid out and said, which of these sessions are most important to you, and how to deal with a hard market, how to deal with it in sales, how to deal with your customers, how to deal with your staffing, morale and stuff. Those all elevated to the top. Interestingly enough, how to hire people completely dropped off the list. And we've been talking about hiring for talent, and that's just been everything recently. And it didn't even get one vote. It was like, yep, if I could only choose 4, that's not part of my issue right now. So,
Wow.
both our November and our Joe Vincent January thing is all baked around it, bringing in the AM Best folks to talk about what's happening with rating. How do you take complex, products and package them together on, property insurance, big commercial stuff. So bringing sophisticated resources to our agents so that they have them for their clients is going to be a key thing for those of you who are in the technology space and in the education space and in the, obviously the E&S market and the products and coverages that we can put together and package for people. So it's interesting to see the tone out there and the angst that it's created as far as what's my major pain point. And you guys have heard hiring for a couple of years now, right? Is like this major thing. And maybe part of that, you guys, is that technology is getting better and they're using it better. So it feels less of a painful thing to deal with. Is I'm just not going to throw a warm body at it. I'm going to figure out what the process is. Maybe we can automate, and then the human element becomes less of a stress point.
Yeah, I hope you're right. I don't think so, but I don't think that
Well, I'm always optimistic, David, always optimistic.
they're trying to, and that's the gap that we're trying to fill too. As we talk to agencies, big and small, and roll-ups, and big strategics, we believe an area that they can create their own capacity is to automate the small stuff, right? The repeatable stuff, the relatively simple stuff, so that you can throw bodies at the more complex things that need it, right? That are harder to automate and have typically associated revenue, right? That makes it sense to throw people at it, and I think that is a way to think about, look at your book of business inside your agency as a portfolio and figure out the easiest things, the new business as well as existing clients, to automate. And then where do you need to put your, really, smart people or limited resources? So.
Yep.
Well, as you mentioned, Mart, I had the easier job today. Y'all brought all the fire. I was just here to facilitate it. So, this was a wonderful conversation. I took a lot away from it personally. Any final thoughts you would give to agencies around this topic, or what would be the biggest takeaway?
I guess I would just say, are you opening this conversation up and being strategic with your staff so they're included in the decision making? Your staff knows better than anyone what could be done better, and I don't know that we make that as an overt conversation as we could. So things like, where do you think things should just be easier? Where are you spending extra time? Being purposeful about laying out visual processes, even if it takes 15 minutes to, let's just brainstorm and put it out there. But I think we get into day to day and we get wrapped up in all the things we've got to do, and we don't pause. And so finding some time to pause and problem solve, it won't happen overnight, but if you make it part of your culture, one day you'll look back and be like, wow, it's better. It is better, and we can see it and we can even measure it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the idea that technology is going to replace people is completely wrong, right? There are lots of things out there that an agency owner can do and look at, to make their selves more efficient. Whether, even if like hiring is not like a top 4 thing, it's still really important in growing people and building expertise for the future. Right. This is a difficult business, and it's a difficult time, but it's always a difficult business, right? To make these recommendations and keep clients and, keep up with their changes, et cetera. And, that's what makes it unique. And, as an agency owner, there are lots of tools out there that you can use to, consume and keep clients, make better recommendations. And increase your revenue, increase your client book, increase your retention. But it does take, right, a leadership focus to do those things, because doing the same thing will get probably a worse outcome, right, in the future. because it is more complicated.
Love it. Great way to end it there. So I do want to thank the 35 or so folks, close to 40 that joined today, and the 25 that are still hanging around. David, Marat, wonderful conversations. Really appreciate you joining. So I'm sure you can find these two lovely folks on LinkedIn to connect with. Of course, you know, from David and I's perspective on the technology side, if you're looking for solutions, once you kind of go through your customer journey, we'd be happy to have conversations around how we can support that. And again, thank you for everybody for joining. Amanda says thank you all. So really appreciate it. We will send out this recording today. And have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks for including me.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Nice
Take
to
care.
meet you all.
All right. Nice to meet you guys. Thank you.